So here it is, the real story of Earth as I've been told. This planet was not the result of a big bang or the creation of God as you understand God from the teachings we've been taught. This planet was seeded with life by race of benevolent aliens from a planet called Eden. It's located in the Centauri star system. And when I say life, I mean all of it, especially us. This race of beings are immortal, and for millions of years they developed all that has ever lived on this planet. It was their seed bank, lovingly referred to as the Garden of Eden. The most beautiful of all planets, by far, is Earth. These beings were given the responsibility of populating vast assortment of planets in many places with plant and animal life. It was their job to create, to seed life. Unlike the story we were told, God does not work alone. As you see, we have angels speaking for all of you. And for the record, the entirety of the universe refers to Creator God as the One, and Creator is a fitting assertion. The One is neither alive or dead, male or female, good nor bad. Creator just is. Creator is life, all life. The One is responsible for creating all the framework which functions to provide an environment for everything to exist in. Creator created this planet and all planets you will ever visit. The One was most impressed by the intelligent creatures that function to serve the universe Creator created, the immortals. They are benevolent in nature and guided by love. The craftsmen tasked with maintaining the integrity of what the One had created. Each variety is responsible for its own set of initiatives bestowed upon them. Some maintained light, some sound, some created lesser beings to inhabit the planets our creators from Eden seeded with life from their amazing garden, and so on. However, in the face of all the One had created, even Creator was not perfect. The One had made only one mistake, but it was a big one. I'm not going to even pretend I understand it. But in the beginning, when the One was all there was, Creator became lonely. To combat this problem, the One divided itself by 25% to create another, lesser version of itself. This new number 2 quickly realized that's exactly what it was. Lesser. The One could have split in half and made them equal, but Creator didn't. And when the One finished what Creator had set out to do, create the universe, number 2 took offense to the fact Creator played no role whatsoever in all that was created. Upon realizing the sole purpose of number 2's existence was to keep the One from becoming lonely again, Creator decided to leave. Number 2 fell from grace and rejected Creator's place at the side of Creator's Creator and left. At the time, number 2 didn't realize it, but its choice to leave introduced something new to the universe. Two things actually: conflict and free will. Number 2 took up residence in a far-off corner of the universe. It didn't take long to realize, though, Creator was all alone just as well. As the One had divided itself to solve the same problem, so too did number 2. But number 2 didn't want to face the same dilemma. So Creator divided into 6 equal individuals. And they quickly set out to develop this corner of the universe into their very own version of what the rest of the universe was like. However, the division into 6 individuals had corrupted the very nature of what that being had been in the first place. And the result was a galactic society of miscreants, elites who care. 9th division had separated more than just number 2. It deleted key bits of knowledge and understanding from the consciousness of the whole universal subconscious. So when these 6 rejects seeded their own little corner in the universe, they didn't even realize or understand. All the creatures they created to reside on the planets had no soul intact. They were flesh and blood beings who only lived for a certain length of time and would die one day. We were created from the One pure just the way we were, with a soul, for our reason, for a grand God created conscious reason. It was the intention of our creators for us to be the caretakers and guardians of the Garden of Eden. So this is where the soul was educated and prepared for our role in the afterlife of seeding planets. For us, that was our role after our time expired on Earth. Here we learned the needs of all the plants, animals, insects, and aquamarine life involved with our work. The knowledge was retained by the soul, and upon its arrival back on Eden, could begin working in the field of planet seeding almost immediately was the chore of all beings. When our creators made humans, we were made as two halves of a whole. One side of you in the subconscious would exist back home, and the other consciousness is here on Earth. It was a way to never forget home, and in times of struggle, a voice of reason to offer advice once self-aware love happened. To you, my friend, so no matter what, you're never alone, like the one had once been. That voice in your head, your conscience, is actually your other half, and until the two halves are reunited, each functions as its own separate entity in favor of you. However, they share the telepathic link to each other, directly connected by loving. If you sway from love, you lose the connection. Of course, here in our day, they raised us to believe thinking anything other than it's your own voice that would get you locked up in a psych ward. Big threats to protect big secrets. Anyways, the educating of human souls and the evolution of the Garden of Eden went on with great success for hundreds of thousands of years. In fact, it was so successful humans were spread throughout the universe to populate the planets that had been seeded into conscious life. But then everything changed. By the way, I told you which star system Eden is in without feeling like I'm giving up a secret, because there are people here on Earth searching for it, and they already know. The Kepler telescope made a discovery this year, not 6 months ago. There is one particular planet quite close to Earth, like close enough where the technology here will allow a probe to make it there in a relatively short time. It's not Eden, but it's one step closer. They need to be stopped. I've tried more than once to stop them, and I've held the lives of humanity in my hands before. Since then, things have changed. I'll get to what happened. The process of getting home is entirely different. In the past, upon death, our soul immediately ascended back to Eden. It's no longer the case though. Now there are conditions, lessons that must be learned. You must become worthy of immortality first. You must be pure. The good news is, your soul is sent back to Earth as many times as it takes to get it right. How could I relay the same info as David or Lennon and never met either? Nobody has ever given up on. Leave no man behind is a God statement. Leave nobody, not even the most vile of human beings. We all eventually come to reason and get it right. This is why we should be helping each other. One day you will spend eternity with every single human here, unless we fall victim to the trap the elite have set in place. The system that captures your divine light. What that trap is will blow your mind. However, we aren't there yet. There's still more to understand first. Since the last attempt to stop these elite madmen, which is what brought the burning and torture of a group called the Knights Templar, nobody has dared to try and stop them again, and they have taken full advantage of this to secure their stranglehold on planet Earth. The Knights knew what I know, and they were about to tell. Once you know why, and what is at stake, you'll understand why I've made it my choice to confront these men, end these lies, and take back our freedom. And we need to take that freedom not only from the hands of the elite tyrants who control us through money, but from the ones who destroy some of us by taking our souls. I'm talking about the church. You all know which one. They are the real influence behind these madmen running the world. There is none more powerful than the one we are all thinking about. The guy with the funny hat. None human anyways. Yeah, I just said that. But it's gotta be said. And someone had to say it. And that's always been my role, to sound the alarm. But this time, the call will be heard. This time, the world is ready to hear it. With my voice, David's, and many, the age of information has brought a new dimension, one we have never had available before. This time we have the ability to unite us all worldwide. And we are. And the souls of all the warriors who have ever lived and died at the hands of the elite are here helping. All of them. You're all here. Some will know it, most don't, but you all will. The universe will not let you sleep until you accept the responsibility of fixing what we have always allowed them to do to us. The elite aren't exactly like us, in case you haven't noticed. There is an empty void, a hole in all of them. It really is us versus them. You may believe we are all one and some spiritual awakening is on the horizon. But please, know this. There are two humanoid species living together here on Earth. And no, they are not shape-shifting reptilians. In all ways they are identical to us, except for one thing. They don't have a soul, no spirit light. When they die, they are dead. That's it. No more. They are manufactured clones. Well, that's not true. There's one other thing that separates us from them. They will not, under any circumstances, wake up to see the world as we do, ever. These soulless shells I'm talking about are the elite, and they know what they are about and what they will never stop doing. There are others too who suffer an impairment of their soul and they have no idea what they are. But I'll get to that later. It's imperative if we want to experience any kind of freedom again. We begin working together as one well-oiled machine. It's the only way we can move forward into a new age of enlightenment, free from all the pain that you've accepted as your life on planet Earth. But it will not be easy. Look deep down inside yourself. That calling you've always felt inside you, but could never quite figure out. It is our home. It's Eden calling to us all, and your other half reaching for you. And they need you now, more than ever. I'm here on a mission with David and Minnie. I'm here with them to wake you up to what you used to be, to what you are now, and what we all need to do, to what you need to be. If we ever want to be freed from the nightmare we've been tricked into surrendering our lives to. I guess strict isn't the best choice of words. They didn't trick us. They genetically modified us, is what they did over time. And that's the least of it. What I'm about to tell you now is where things get intense. What you think you know about the history of Earth and its many different inhabitants are all lies. And it's the job of the church to protect those lies. And the reward of protecting those lies goes to the enforcers of the lie, the Illuminati. That reward is your life of servitude. And every man, woman, and child belongs to them. Because the elite know they are soulless shells of what we are. They hate us for having souls. Once I explain what they are lying about, and how far they've gone to protect the lie, you'll understand just how much hate for us they hold. The only other things that interest them are material riches and the thrill of feeling somehow superior as they treat us like garbage in our ruthless pursuit of the almighty dollar. And we allow it because deep down we feel like our souls will live on regardless. But that was the old way. All I can say is we were lucky that our creators had made it so only two humans that reproduced would have a child with one pure soul. So, just as everything was going completely as planned with the Garden of Eden, shit happened. There was an invasion on Eden and they lost. They are peaceful scientists, not warriors. The Anunnaki, a race of soulless beings from the corner of the universe developed by what had once been number 2, had come seeking knowledge. They required technology to save the atmosphere of the planet they came from, Nibiru. But Eden refused to help them. They were not in the business of cooperating with any of the soulless abominations created by the six-headed beast, which had manifested from the peace of the one Creator had given up to address its loneliness. And the Anunnaki replied in force. In the process of taking what they came for, they also discovered the location of Earth. They left Eden in near ruins and made off with some very sensitive, essential information about all life, and about planet Earth in particular. The Anunnaki first arrived on planet Earth during a cleansing period around 300,000 years ago. Once all of the different species were properly sampled and classified, or if circumstances required it, the scientists in charge would initiate a cleansing, the eradication of the old, to usher in the new. The idea being to repeat the same process with new varieties of plants and animals, as they were developed and created. As I said, the human being is one half of a whole. On Eden, our other half works to create all the plant and animal life that is taken to Earth for mass production. The one had provided a master set of a select number of plants and animals. These scientists then used the endless possibility of combinations to genetically combine these master life forms into everything living we've ever seen here on Earth. The half that was involved with the genetic creation of a specific plant or animal on Eden worked telepathically with its other human half, as it nurtured and developed that individual life form here on Earth. One half births the species, the other half raises it. This particular ice age was also to repair a structural issue with the drainage system. A series of massive trenches and gullies were needed, and the only thing powerful enough to dig them were migrating glaciers. The humans all relocated to Africa during that time, moved by ships sent from Eden. Unfortunately, this relocation turned out to be the very thing that gave full advantage to the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki were quite pleased with initial test samples they took upon arrival. This planet was rich with monatomic gold, just as the stolen information from Eden had stated. The information from Eden provided them with the formula used to create or repair an atmosphere. Monatomic gold is the key ingredient, and they needed a lot. The first thing the Anunnaki did was set in motion a chain of events which accelerated the melting process. There was a large area, though, where life was thriving, and the climate was fairly stable. Here the Anunnaki found a creature they hoped could be used as workers for the massive job of mining the earth. Humans. However, these creatures were quite different than anything the Anunnaki had ever encountered. They seemed intelligent enough, but they were impossible to deal with. Nothing, not fear, not pain, not even watching their friends die would sway them to what the Anunnaki wanted them to do. It was almost like they had one purpose and couldn't do anything else even if they wanted. But what it really was love for their home and an outright refusal to damage, destroy, alter, or manipulate the earth at the Anunnaki's request. That, and the humans knew something was wrong. They could feel it in their souls, and the voice of their conscience echoed a desperate warning of impending doom. The Anunnaki even tried, unsuccessfully, claiming they were the ones who created the humans. However, at that time the Anunnaki were unaware of the connection the humans had to their other subconscious half back on Eden. The Anunnaki were in fact very intelligent creatures. However, a series of genetic manipulations performed on the male humans would solve the problem, or so it was believed. One by one the male humans were captured and injected with a DNA upgrade that would eventually change the fate of the inhabitants of the Garden of Eden. It would just be a matter of time. The Anunnaki, having completed the genetic tampering, prepared to leave. They needed to give the melting process of the ice-covered planet time to do its thing. A small team was assembled and would remain on Earth to manage and maintain the breeding process of the humans. This task was put into the hands of an top scientist named Enki. Enki was a powerful member of the upper echelon of Anunnaki hierarchy. This covert team would stay hidden and remain secretly among the humans. Enki was very interested in studying the progress on the rate of change in these creatures. The Anunnaki had an amazing gift bestowed by the six-headed beast which created them. They had the power to shape-shift, or transform into whatever they needed to be, so they took on human form. Enki stood among the humans and watched as the other Anunnaki boarded their ship and left Earth. At that point, the changes to the human mind had not taken over yet. And as the ship left, a legend was born about the ones who came from the sky in black clouds that burned in the sky. And in telling this legend, the first of the changes began to materialize in the hearts and minds of the recently injected men, as fear crept in and filled them with a brand new perspective on life. This new emotion clashed heavily with the very limited emotional database humans had been living with up to this point. It only took a few generations of reproduction for Enki to realize something had gone wrong. By this stage, there should have been significant changes in the way this creature's mind worked. But the change was minimal at best. These creatures were learning to simply adapt, and somehow they retained the sense of self-worth they had always enjoyed. Frustrated, Enki began a series of experiments on his modified humans. What he discovered shocked and amazed him. In ways he could not understand, it appeared this creature was in fact two creatures. Enki began to decipher a series of files that were part of his spoils of war from the invasion of Eden, and what he learned, he could not believe. These creatures had something called a soul-alighted spirit, something he had never heard of, something that made these creatures immortal, another totally new concept to Enki, everlasting life, and he wanted that. In fact, he became obsessed with the idea. So obsessed that Enki entirely forgot why he had attempted to change the humans in the first place. All that mattered was finding a way to implant or replicate one of these souls into himself. Experiment after experiment failed, and as these further modified humans got released back among the others, the more damaged the integrity of the humans became. After several more generations, significant changes could be seen. So much so that they began to change in their physical appearance over time, not only mentally as the modification was initially supposed to be. The most significant change being the color of some of the creature's skin. There seemed to be several distinct skin tones and physical attributes appearing. Though Enki had yet to discover the secret of the soul, he was forced to return his attention back to creating a workforce for the mining operation. He was rather impressed with one particular group that stood out from the others. It appeared this group was going to be the dominant one. This dominant version of a human had changed almost entirely in color. It began with deep dark brown skin like they all had in the beginning, but now it had transformed to become pale and light-colored, very much like Enki himself. Up till this point, Enki and his crew had lived unnoticed among the humans. But it was time for a change. It was now about 190,000 Earth years since the Anunnaki had left in their flying spaceship, leaving Enki and his crew behind. Enki and his kind lived to be about 360,000 years old in Earth terms, which meant if he was going to complete the actual mission he was here for, he would have to find success soon. His age was creeping up on him. The ice sheets that had once covered the Earth had been greatly diminished by this time, and the redistribution of the humans could begin. Enki had sent for the Anunnaki to return. Upon arrival, the first mission was to gather all the humans of each kind based on their skin color. Then, each race was strategically dispersed around the world to the locations that were no longer inhospitable. There were 4 distinct races based solely on skin tone: dark brown, light brown, yellow, and white. The first 3 races were relocated in their entirety and kept together. The white race, however, was divided into 3 groups. See you soon on the next episode. Unusual History Part 2. These smaller groups of white humans were each placed to live with and among the other 3 races. And just as Enki had envisioned, the white humans did whatever they had to do so they would find themselves in a position of authority. It didn't take long, and with the help of the white humans, the mining operations to amass monatomic gold were finally underway. Turning his attention back to the humans, it quickly became clear to Enki there was no way to actually detect the soul while it was inside the body of the human beings. It frustrated Enki to no end. He had gone so far as to take 13 human wives and father a large amount of children, half human, half Anunnaki. His intention was that if he could not achieve immortality, he could produce children that could. However, it was this phase of experimentation that nearly took Enki from the grips of sanity to an obsessed maniac. There was no way to know if his experiments worked. The soul was no more detectable in his children than in humans. Whether he had been successful or not, Enki would never know. It was at this time Enki made his most crucial discovery. By chance, he stumbled across some undiscovered information stolen from Eden. Vital information about the soul. He learned the soul was, in fact, a tangible item. It could only be detected and seen after the death of the human host. It appeared then as it traversed the universe on the trip back to Eden. It became vulnerable in the form of light. It didn't take Enki long to create a plan to confuse, distract, manipulate, and erase any lingering recognition of their soul and its purpose. Enki didn't want the knowledge of who they were, why they were on Earth, and what the purpose of the soul was, creeping back into the minds of men. He would give them a new and totally different understanding to live by. It was the act of leaving the one, which number 2 had done in the early years of creation, that gave all creatures something called free will. Free will would, in the eyes of Enki, become the most favorable of gifts bestowed on creation by what had become known as the 6-headed beast. And Enki was prepared to take full advantage of his creator's many gifts if it meant immortality. The children of Enki were a powerful group. They had no soul, but they did have some of the strengths that made Enki such a powerful creature. One such quality they acquired was a lifespan much greater than a human. On average, these children would roam the earth for up to 5,000 years. Another was their size and strength. The males in particular reached heights of 10 feet, weighed nearly 800 pounds, and had the strength of 10 men. The reaction of the population towards these massive creatures, who otherwise resembled humans, is what gave Enki the idea which ultimately resulted in our current state of world affairs today. Enki had his children roam the earth in search of the worst human beings alive. It was now apparent just how wrong some of Enki's experiments had gone. Murderers, rapists, thieves, and tyrants made up a decent part of the population. When they found these offenders, they made an example out of them and slaughtered them all. The children of Enki told the remaining humans the type of behavior these bad humans displayed was against what they were willing to accept as allowable from this point on. The children of Enki claimed their role as gods amongst men. They presented their absent father as the one, creator of heaven and earth, and promised anyone who crossed them or their father would meet the same fate as the many men they had recently slaughtered. The humans began to cower in fear at the sight of these massive half-humans. and they would go to any length to secure the favor of these gods if they could. The reason Enki was going to such great lengths to deceive the humans should be of great concern to every human alive today. Enki had been successful in his attempts to capture a human soul as it ascended to Eden. He formed the grid over the planet. What he learned from this was, and still is, a very frightening prospect which affects us as human beings to this very day. Enki had found a way to harness, drain, and absorb the unique type of energy the human soul contained into his own system. And by doing so, Enki had secured the lesser version of the immortality he had sacrificed so much of his sanity to while searching for the secrets to living forever. All he needed was an endless supply of human souls to drain and absorb, to consume. For as long as he can secure a steady supply of human souls, Enki will not die as long as the elite control the system. In their true form, the Anunnaki were not small creatures. Enki was a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier than the largest and most powerful of his children, Zeus. In his full Anunnaki dress uniform and in his true physical form, Enki presented himself to the occupants of Earth. The weapons of mass destruction Enki possessed gave credence to the claim he made to the population in each location he appeared as he demonstrated his powers for emphasis. Region by region, Enki visited all the occupied territories around the world in support of what his children had recently established: the world's very first religion. Enki was determined to be their god, their creator and judge, and ruler of all. The concept took its place immediately in the minds of the population of Earth. To disrespect the one or his many children meant certain doom. But serving them with your life and living to please the one meant great rewards here on Earth, and also in the afterlife. Enki painted a beautiful picture to the humans of eternal life with him. He explained the nature of the human soul and how it was a part of the human experience that could live forever as a guest in his kingdom. Next, he explained the nature of free will. To gain entry to his kingdom, which is called heaven, a conscious desire had to be spoken aloud, expressing a request to exist in heaven with the One. The humans were made to drop to their knees in front of Enki and pledge, on their life, to abide by the rules he had created for them to live by. And so it began. And for the next 4,000 years, Enki and his children solidified their stronghold on the human race. Like their father, the children of Enki took human lovers. By the time the first of Enki's children had grown old and died, Enki's family had grown to be enormous. By the 5th generation of breeding with humans, Enki's grandchildren had taken on the human form and were indistinguishable from the actual humans. Under Enki's guidance, his grandchildren would tighten the hold on humans by introducing governments and the church to all of mankind, each with its own design to control how the humans lived their lives. The world was separated into manageable-sized sections called countries. Borders were drawn, and several kingdoms established within each country. The most influential of Enki's extended family were put in positions of power to rule over the entirety of each country. A hierarchy of control over all the humans was put in place, all to secure Enki's place at the top of it all, the One. And to this day, Though we don't realize or accept it, the descendants of Enki's children continue to hold control of the world. And they still have no souls. As observant, intelligent, and cautious as Enki was, it turned out he wasn't quite as secretive as he thought himself to be. Another member of the Anunnaki had discovered why Enki had gone to such extremes, creating this elaborate system of control over the humans. Marduk was an outcast, and he hated this planet. He was looking for a way to seek revenge on the human race. Like most deviant minds, he blamed all things, except himself, for all of his problems. When Marduk discovered the secret Enki was keeping, he documented everything, including how Enki was taking credit for all creation and falsely claiming to be the one. Marduk used the evidence he had gathered to blackmail Enki into providing him access to the technology so he could consume souls and become immortal as well. As miserable, angry, and pissed off at the world as Marduk was, there was no surprise in the way he chose to win possession of the souls. He played on the worst of the human traits that had developed in the unfortunate victims of Enki's obsession with genetic manipulation. Traits like greed, anger, jealousy, and corruption were Marduk's signature approach. He would provide material riches such as money, gold, precious gems, and even sultry women, and offer them a life of gluttony, control, and power to turn people away from Enki's promise of eternal life in heaven. Marduk painted his own picture of an awesome place to spend eternity, which also would attract its fair share of humans. Like Enki, Marduk had succumbed to the beauty held by the women of Earth. He too had a large family of part human, part Anunnaki children and grandchildren. He brought them all together. But rather than operate like Enki and create an opposing faction of towns and cities of their own, Marduk decided his approach would consist of infiltrating and corrupting the system of control Enki had established from the inside out. In response, Enki had the church add a story that told of a fate worse than death for those who would take up sides with Marduk. To join with Marduk meant your soul would burn and be tortured forever in a truly evil, sick place called hell. And just as this battle for human souls really got going in full swing, it came to a sudden stop. In a stunning display of Creator's intense capability, the One appeared suddenly out of thin air. In the next instant, swooping from the sky came a small fleet of spacecraft which landed very close to where the One now stood. From inside these crafts, a group of representatives from Eden stepped foot on the soil of Earth for the first time in hundreds of thousands of years. Sadness turned quickly to anger as what they saw around them sunk in. They wanted their planet back. But with something as complicated as the One mediating the situation, it would not be as simple as forcing the Anunnaki out. The One saw opportunity for a test of strength between the soulless creation of the six-headed beast and his very own creation, the residents of Eden. It was the humans the One wanted put to the test. Creator had approved the original design of human beings, but now had some serious doubt about the integrity of this mutated creature that was really nothing like it had started out to be. There were great concerns about gifting immortality to such an unstable life form the humanoid had changed. Thus it now has to prove itself. So, to ensure these humans were put to the test, the One decided that the Anunnaki would no longer be allowed to reveal themselves in the flesh to humans. Both Enki and Marduk would have to go into permanent hiding or leave Earth. It was up to them. The residents of Eden were given the same restrictions. They were not permitted to show themselves to the residents of Earth. They had to find a way for the humans to see what was happening and what had happened in the past for the world to end up going from what it was to what it is now, today here. Enki was quick to approach Marduk. With all that was at stake, the two opposing Anunnaki warriors decided to join forces and unite their families who were permitted to stay on Earth. They had no souls, so were of no interest to the one. At this point, Marduk went into hiding. Enki, on the other hand, used his ability to shapeshift one last time, as he too disappeared from the face of the earth, never to be seen in his true form again. Enki transformed himself into a fertilized embryo in the womb of a descendant of his own family, a young woman named Mary. 9 months later, Enki was born into the world as a human baby. A baby with no soul of its own. A baby named Jesus. A baby that would forever enslave mankind and provide himself and Marduk an everlasting supply of souls. At least that was the plan the two Anunnaki had come up with after being confronted by the One. The Centurions from Eden were a smart bunch. But this type of mental warfare was not their strong suit. The Anunnaki had the advantage since deceit seemed to be the spirit of this contest. They were not without some tricks of their own, however. The residents of Eden had already captured several humans and began the complicated process of reversing the genetic manipulations that Enki had performed. It turned out to be impossible. Much of what Enki had done was now a permanent part of human life regardless. They had a plan B, and once more the humans were subjected to further genetic modifications. It was a tricky process. The human host had to physically die. Then their soul was captured and manipulated. A jolt of electricity was then used to bring the human back to life. And that was it. The altered soul returned to the body. The body released back to where it was taken from, unharmed. This method wasn't the quick fix needed, but in the long run, it would be more effective. This addition to the soul didn't change the person who received the upgrade. It was designed to create change in the offspring of the recipients. It was a process that would take a very long time, but it would eventually produce some very different humans. They would look the same as everyone else, but their hearts and minds would be far more in tune with the needs of Mother Earth and her occupants. Their empathetic values would outshine common man. And in the early part of the 1900s, the very first indigo soul arrived on Earth, a quirky Australian man named Darrell Flynn. The long-awaited results started to trickle in, until the late 1960s when the first main wave of indigo souls were born into this world. And every year since. I'm sure as indigo souls matured and began having children of their own, the crystal children began to rise. The crystal children are to be the witnesses to a great global change. It's their duty and role to document what takes place. They will use the knowledge of their journey to create a better way of life for the future offspring. Never again will people suffer the fate the human population has endured so far at the hands of Enki and Marduk. The union between the children of Enki and Marduk was very powerful and very corrupt. For almost 2,000 years, they have worked hand in hand to ensure the secrets and lies of the past stay buried. The church knows all the lies. It's their role to protect Mordecai Enki and keep them alive by ensuring a steady stream of our souls to arrive to be consumed. It was also a key component of the plan to ensure that the world never finds out how two Anunnaki madmen fooled the world with the story about Jesus and Lucifer to enslave the world. If you haven't caught on, there is only one way to win back the Garden of Eden. Enki and Mordecai have exceeded their lifespan and are vulnerable to our unconditional love. The source of their immortality, our souls, is all that is keeping them alive. Our recent surge in spirituality and atheism has weakened them. The Pope is above all current leaders on the planet. He commands the legion of soulless tyrants who have taken over the world to attack us. They have crafted a web of deceit and corruption in the never-ending lust for power and control of the entire planet just to capture souls for the two gods. And in doing so, they have enslaved us all with war and a list of unspeakable controls to scramble our gut intuition. We are bound to them by something called the monetary system, via many avenues: big pharma, taxation, war, healthcare, blah, blah. Value is placed on a worthless object, a simple piece of paper, for example. That object is then provided in great quantity to most anyone with the ability to repay what was borrowed. By charging a substantial fee for such a loan, these tyrants in control of the monetary system are making a huge profit at our expense for doing absolutely nothing. They have found a way to control every aspect of our lives. They control food production and distribution, healthcare, space programs, knowledge consumption. They control energy production and distribution. They control access to water, healthcare, education, and a whole long list of other essential services. And they have introduced a massive array of distractions which draw our attention away from everything they do. TV being one of the most potent distractions of them all, and war as the #1 large bargaining chip. These distractions serve to create an atmosphere of confusion about and detachment from the present moment we all share. In case it may have slipped past you, the present moment is all we have. It is the concrete of creation. Though their system of timekeeping lends a hand to distract you from the fact that time doesn't exist, it is always right now. Right now is the time to face these liars. Right now is the time to walk away from their churches, their banks, their corporations that monopolize the food industry, and their set of principles which guide our entire lives. Right now it's time to end this nightmare of illusion and deceit. If we choose not to act against these tyrants soon, our fate will be sealed for another 1,000 years, 100 million years, before anyone with the courage to lead this reclamation of planet Earth will rise again. We are here just as David has sworn to give his life, as many have to prove all we say is real. How many nightmares or gallons of bloodshed will it take to prove simple proofs to be seen? Please understand, our lives are delivered to Earth to free yours.